So during 2015, as I was researching different methods of mentoring and I was developing our first mentoring qualification, it became really clear that there was this gap. And the gap is or was that if you wanted to do coaching, then I could find you 7 different structures for the conversation. But if you wanted to do mentoring, well, that was just about advising people. There wasn't a structure for the conversation. There was nothing. There was this massive void. And mentoring has been around for thousands of years. And full mentoring schemes have been around in workplaces, in organisations, in education for years. But actually, no one had actually taken the time to research and to think about and to develop a kind of conceptual model about what the structure for that conversation should look like. So it irritated me. And when something irritates me, that's when I then kind of go into finding a solution. So I worked with some mentors and came up with a model, a structured model, which was at that time called the Mentors Mantra. And this was, actually it might have been late 2014 into early 2015. It was certainly that long ago. But the whole point was that actually it was about giving mentors a tool that they could use to actually structure the conversation without it launching into, just being about the mentor just telling the mentee what to do. And that's, we see that so often, and it's one of the biggest mistakes that I see in mentoring is that actually people don't understand the role of listening, the role of silence, and being comfortable as a mentor with silence. So that actually you give the mentee time to think about what it is they're facing, and you give them a chance to actually work through what it is they want to say and to talk through it. And that's so important. That safe space is so important because so often they will get to the end of sharing what's concerning them, and they'll get through to the end, and actually they'll be so close to solving it and to coming up with their own plan that the role of a mentor is just to help point them in the right direction, maybe give them some advice, or just to help them to clarify, these are the options, this is your menu almost of what you want to choose, or what your options are. And so the Mentors Mantra, as it launched, consisted of 4 stages. We've now developed that into 6, but it launched with 4 stages, which are: you are safe, so making sure that you've got the right environment, making sure that boundaries around confidentiality are understood. Things like safeguarding. Actually, we can't keep things confidential when there's a safeguarding concern. So making sure that the person feels safe and that they understand the boundaries around the conversation. And when you're seeing someone regularly, whether that will have already been established very early on in the relationship, this is also the stage where you're to enter into a little bit of small talk. And people naturally do enter into small talk, and they will, we'll talk about being British, we talk about the weather, but actually there very often is, at the start of human interactions, some kind of small talk. And what you are doing is you're trying psychologically to find some kind of shared experience or some kind of common ground, again, to reinforce the safety in our conversation, in our relationship. And so it might be about sports, it might be about the weather, it might be about travel or the journey here, or something that you're both going through at the moment. And so what we do is we enter into small talk. Small talk is really important psychologically, and many people will try and dismiss it, but actually it's really important. And in the mentoring relationship, actually that initial little bit of small talk helps to re-establish that safety and that shared experience in that relationship. And then originally we then go into, it's all right to think about it, where the mentor would sit in silence, and it's all right to talk about it, which is where the mentor would then listen to the mentee discuss whatever they're going through. And finally, the original model was that the fourth stage was, let's make a plan. And that was where the mentor worked with the mentee to understand their different options, almost like a menu. I keep coming back to this concept of menus, but it's really important, actually. We should get through to the end of a mentoring conversation where a mentee understands what their different options are, and the mentee selects what they are going to do, what their action plan is. It does not belong to the mentor. It's not the mentor's to tell the mentee what they're going to go away and do. That's teaching. That's a didactic relationship. That's not a mentoring relationship. It's all about the mentee being able to walk away with a clear idea, a clear focus on what they are going to do, what their next steps are. Now, over time, what we've done is we've actually reviewed that conceptual framework. We're now talking 12 years later, we've reviewed that conceptual framework and we've added in the mentor's inquiry. So now we're looking at safety at the first stage, but then we have a mentor's inquiry. And so this was inferred in the original model but wasn't explicit. And so this is where the mentor asks an open question. So how have you been getting on? Or what would you like to discuss today? Or what have you brought today to discuss? And then they go into the silence to allow the mentee to think, to talk, and then it's about the decision. And so before you get through to the making a plan, it's about making a decision. And again, goes back to this whole concept of menu, actually helping the mentee to see these are the different options. It might be useful for me as a mentor to share a story with you or to give you an example. It might be an idea to share some experiences. It might be an idea to do a mind map or a brainstorm of different options that you've got. But it's down to the mentee about what they want to do, and it's their plan. They need to come up with it. They need to own it. If they want you as a mentor to tell you a story, then they will ask for it. You've given that option that they will ask you. The difficulty is obviously as a mentor, and this is part of what we teach when we're talking about this. The difficulty is as a mentor, you've got all of these stories, all of these things. Oh, I must tell them about such and such. Oh, this reminds me of such and such. But the difficulty is that actually if that's not going to help the mentee and the mentee does not feel it's going to help them, you should not be telling that story. That's your brain sabotaging the mentoring process at that point. If it's useful, then the mentee will, and when you give them that menu, you will then say to the mentee, it's your choice. And if it's useful, they will say it. Actually, can you give me an example of when you've come across this before? And then that's when you can then share. And so that's the mentoring conversation structure, the mentor's mantra. And as I say, it was developed some time ago. And I'm genuinely delighted to see how far the reach has got with this, because there was just this void. There was nothing that existed there, and now I see it being used by organisations around the world. I see it cropping up in different, mentoring operation manuals. I see it cropping up on different websites and things like that, and it fills me with an enormous sense of pride knowing that actually there are thousands of mentors out there who are using that structure for the mentoring conversation. And actually, I can remember, coming up with it. I can remember, dealing with, building it from the bottom up, and now just to see that global impact, see it being used by different organisations, and it is just so wonderful to see. So honestly, if you're a mentor and you haven't come across this, then you should do it. If you are an organisation and you are using it, fantastic. Please keep using it, because honestly, it's having a massive impact on thousands of mentees all around the world.